Tonight, our sponsoring partner in history is Spirit of Bohemia Mining Days, and I want to welcome everybody to History Pub. I want to also mention again that we're in an historic building that was built in December of 1908. It was the Burkholder Woods building, and years ago it was refurbished. At one time it was Hoover's Shoe Store, and it didn't look anything like this. So how many, now that we've had the event and celebrated the opening of our revitalization of Main Street, how many like it? I love it. Yay. And so there's some historic photos. If you look back into the 20s and 30s, you'll see that it has the same torch lights that are downtown. And so we've kind of went back to a more historic look, and I just think it's wonderful. So I want to thank Bart for hosting the History Pub here at the Axe and Fiddle. It's a great venue. He's also generous with prizes for the trivia and an extra one for after the 50-50 raffle. I want to thank Zeth for the audio tonight, and Jim Lockhart for video. He's a videographer and he captures these, and they are on the CG Partners in History or Cottage Grove Partners in History YouTube channel. And Dana Meriday does our promotions on Facebook, and he does a great job. Heather Endicott does the graphic design for our posters. And the 2026 History Pub Partners in History are the Cottage Grove Historical Museum, the Cottage Grove Genealogical Society, Oregon Aviation Historical Society, Cottage Grove Historical Society, Cottage Grove City Library, Spirit of Bohemia Mining Days, Singing Creek Education Center. I'm just going to give you a heads up. July 14th, we're going to have a really special program. Not that any of them are more special than another, but we've never had a topic like this before. And it's going to be how Cottage Grove became Animal House Town. And one more reminder, the Cottage Grove Genealogical Society has completed a project on the World War II veterans from Cresswell to Yoncalla, from Lorraine to Diston. The honor gallery up in the hallway at the community center, and it will be there through the end of this month, and then Drain Library is going to host it for about 4 weeks. So if you haven't seen it yet, please go over and look, because each story of these young men who gave their all is unique, tragic, but we need to honor them. So tonight we have Matthew Hewlett, the Executive Director of Spirit of Bohemia Mining Days. And Matthew was born at the old Cottage Grove Hospital in the summer of 1995. At around the age of 7, Matthew and his family moved to Florence, Oregon, and they lived at Camp Clearwalks. And we know Camp Clearwalks. Until his freshman year of high school, then they moved back to Cottage Grove, and he graduated from Cottage Grove High School in 2013. Excuse me. Matthew entered the workforce and found his way through fast food, retail, industrial painting, caregiving, then maintenance, work at senior living facilities. Matthew began his involvement in Bohemia Mining Days in 2019 as Bohemia City Jail Cell Photo Booth. I've been in that booth. And he revived an age-old tradition that he didn't realize when he started doing that. In 2024, Matthew and around 30 other people came together to ensure that Bohemia Mining Days would be able to celebrate its 65th year. Late in 2024, Matthew incorporated Spirit of Bohemia Mining Days as a 501c3 nonprofit, and Matthew took up the executive director role for the organization and established Spirit of Bohemia Mining Days as a year-round educational heritage hub, emphasizing youth, cultural education, content creation, and historic preservation. And he does a darn good job. Let's give Matthew a hand.
Well, there's a rowdy bunch of hooligans in here tonight, that's for sure. Alrighty, folks. Well, thank you so much for having me tonight. We've got a pretty good presentation coming this evening. So, I want to see a show of hands. How many people have been to Bohemia Mining Days? Yeah, that's what I hoped for. Just about everyone in the room. Well, if you want to come again this year, it's going to be July 16th, 17th, and 18th. Always the third weekend of July right here in Coiner Park. Couple of announcements to make about the festival this year before we get into the history of it. So, couple of things. If you haven't heard, the parade route has changed. So most of you are probably familiar with the last 20 years or so, the parade route went from 10th Street to Main Street to Gateway. Well, in honor of our beautiful downtown, we were able to work with the city of Cottage Grove to get it to go from 5th Street all the way through historic Main Street all the way up to Gateway. And huge shout out to the city of Cottage Grove. Yes, absolutely. So that'll be a big thing this year. And hopefully we can keep it that way. But big shout out to the city of Cottage Grove because Mike Sauerwein and Faye Stewart were the ones that really handled getting the ODOT approval for that, because we're going to have to shut down Highway 99 for a couple of hours. And that's a pretty big deal. So it's awesome that it's coming back. One other thing, if you didn't know, this year we have revived the breakfast in the park. So on Saturday morning, right before the parade, Urban Kitchen is going to be helping us ensure that you can get a nice meal before you watch the parade from your special seating down in the Coiner Park. And that'll be really cool because we haven't been able to have that in the last few years, but they came together and said we're going to make it happen. And as I think of more, I'll tell you more probably at the end. But you're here for some history, right? So let's get started. So, Bohemia Mining Days. A lot of folks think that the first Bohemia Mining Days was in 1959 when Ray Nelson started it. That's not technically true. Technically, the first Bohemia Days happened in 1935. It was organized by the Cottage Grove American Legion. And it was a huge shindig. At the time, in 1935, I believe there was only about 3,000 people, give or take, living in Cottage Grove. And if I remember, about 2,000, I'm pretty sure 5,000 people showed up for a parade and the festivities. The reason they started this in 1935 was because they wanted to honor what their parents and their grandparents had done in the Bohemia Mining District. So if you didn't know this, we celebrate Bohemia Mining Days because of the success that happened in the Bohemia Mining District. So that is 36 miles out Row River, just past Diston, and it is beautiful country. Beautiful country if you've never been there. Sorry about that. Anyway, beautiful country up there, and there's lots of history out there because pretty much from the early 1860s all the way until the, give or take, the 1930s, that was a profitable area, not just for Cottage Grove, but Oregon as a whole, because folks were buying their mining equipment originally here in Cottage Grove, but as industry and cars began to form, they would buy them from Eugene and Portland, and all of the wealth that came out of the Bohemia Mining District was transferred all up and down the West Coast. One of the things we have here, that Bohemia Days sheet music. So that was originally written in 1935. The notes themselves were copyrighted and belonged to another song, but they wanted to create a song about the festival and about our town and our heritage. And we've got that posted up on our social media. Last time I played it, but I forgot about that, so it won't be played tonight. But it is up on our social media. Anyway, Bohemia Days in 1935. Over 5,000 attendees, many in full pioneer or mining costumes. They were trying to raise funds for child welfare, Boys and Girl Scouts, Red Cross efforts, and local charities and community services. This was a big event for 1935. It featured military drills by the Corvallis Legion Drum Corps, and old-time mining equipment displays, and street dancing and community festivities. They kicked it off with a large indoor celebration at the Armory and marked the beginning of Cottage Grove's identity as a festival town. And these days we have at least two, the WOE and BMD, and then some others that I'm not as familiar with, but I see them all the time. So during the research that I did to figure out the history, and I'll be upfront with you, a lot of this research is a year old at this point, and I need to update this presentation. So next time this comes up, don't hesitate to come watch, because there might be some new information. That said, while I was researching, I was able to find out that 1935 wasn't just a sole event. I also found evidence of a parade in 1949, and recently I found out that the rodeo was one of the groups that were doing parades back in the day. I don't know if that extends this far. The thing about historic research is you can find one story, right? You can find one example of something that could be a fact or could be an opinion, but you can't define it as a fact until you've found at least 2 or 3 sources to verify that. So, as with all historical research, and there's a lot of people in this room that do that, you understand that it comes with time. So everything we do at Spirit of BMD is a hope that you guys will also do your own due diligence and do research and find sources and, uncover the stories of our past. Anyway, during this 1949 parade, one of the standout floats featured a car covered in 500 individual carpet squares. So I don't know, I've been to a few parades, and that doesn't strike me as the best parade float that I've ever heard, but it's certainly one that's worthy of talking about, because if I covered my cart in 500 carpet squares, I bet it'd be darn hot in there. Following that event a couple of years later, we enter 1955, and this was Cottage Grove's centennial celebration. So Cottage Grove came to being in 1855, and that was the very first moment that it was recognized as an official place to live. So on their centennial, there was a 10-day spectacle honoring that 100 years, and they commemorated what was believed to be Cottage Grove's 100th anniversary. Events spanned through the 4th of July with parades, fireworks, and community-wide activities. Folks, as usual, dressed up in Western wear, and men competed in a beard and mustache contest. And if you didn't have a beard, you could be fined and sent to jail. So keep that in mind for Bohemia Mining Days this year. I want to see beards on every face in this room, including the women. So one of the spectacles at the time was the Hewlett Saloon, revived in, I believe this photo was taken at the book mine. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, this photo. So this photo, verified by a great historian, was taken at the book mine, and it was revived. They revived the Hewlett Saloon, and there's some debate whether the Hewlett Saloon actually existed at the book mine or whether it was in a different place. I don't know the true answer to that. What I do know is that Gail has a certificate that says that is the Hewlett Saloon, and that's pretty darn cool. Oh, don't mind me, I'm just getting caught up here. All right, 1955. That was a major success, and that showed the people of Cottage Grove that there was really something to be had with having a heritage-based festival here in Cottage Grove. It really laid the groundwork for what would become Bohemia Mining Days. And in quotes there at the bottom, and I think this applies even today. Cottage Grove thrives when we gather to honor our past. I don't know about you, but I feel like our identity as a community and our identity as a town thrives under our heritage and our history. I feel like Cottage Grove, especially in this historic building and all these historic buildings down Main Street, our identity should be founded in our past and in our history for the benefit of all of us. With that, we see the guy that had that same vision. This is a photo of Ray Nelson. In 1959, Ray Nelson formed a booster club that became the Cottage Grove Prospectors, and later on became the Cottage Grove Prospectors and Gold Diggers. The club motto inspired preservation efforts beyond the festival. Their club motto is prospecting better things for Cottage Grove. They're a great group of folks, and those are currently the folks that run the Breakfast on the Mountain. Has anyone in this room been to the Breakfast on the Mountain? Give me a show of hands. Hey, that's a good fair number. I do see a couple of hands that aren't up. So let me tell you, if you haven't been to the Breakfast on the Mountain, it's a wonderful event. Dave, how many people would you say show up at the breakfast?
Usually between 700 and about 900 people up there every year.
Nearly 1,000 people drive up those old roads that were paved the way for gold mining, to go have a nice breakfast, pancakes, bacon, eggs, that sort of thing.
Pancakes, ham, eggs.
Yeah, pancakes, ham, and eggs. Coffee, can't have it without coffee. That said, Ray Nelson was the lead on this project. He was a very prolific man. He helped, he was big in city local government, and he really wanted to make Cottage Grove a better place for everyone. It was actually through him that portions of Bohemia Mountain were dedicated to Lane County. In fact, the spot where the breakfast takes place was his land that he donated to Lane County to make it a county park. One of the other things he did, and if you follow us on Facebook, we covered this recently, he saved the Dr. Snap House from demolition. How many people follow us on Facebook? Yeah, a couple of folks. If you don't, you absolutely should. We're on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And we create these short videos about these things that happened in Cottage Grove and Oregon's history that are really bite-sized, easy to digest, and more fun than an hour presentation, but this is more valuable to me, so. That said, he invented the Prospectors Club, and the Prospectors Club invented Bohemia Mining Days. With the Prospecting Better Things for Cottage Grove mission in mind, in 1961, the group formed a planning committee to reinstate Bohemia Days as an annual event, and we've been going good for 67 years now. These are a couple of photos from the Bohemia Mining District, and I believe these are from the Curtis Irish Archives, which are available at the Genealogical Society. So these are from the Curtis Irish Archives, and that one on the left is, that building is still standing, if you didn't know this. I do believe it has been rebuilt at one point, but that was a number of years ago. That's the old post office and general store there on the left. That is still standing at the Music Mine site, which is where Bohemia City once was. And then that building on the right is the Lundberg Stage House. Alex Lundberg, who Dave is a very good historian on this fellow, but he helped form Lund Park alongside Harry Parker. And that Lund Park itself, which is another campsite if you haven't been there, that was one of the places on the way up into the mining district where folks would stay and gather supplies and restock before the steep climb of the mountain. Fun fact relating to Lund Park, does anyone in this room know why Hobo Camp is named Hobo Camp? Tell me, Dave. Because you told me.
Well, there was a campsite for the migrant workers on their way up to the mines. Back in the day, hobo was a slang term for migrant worker.
So if you didn't hear, he said hobo used to be a slang term for a migrant worker. So the folks that didn't live here in the area and were just coming and going would camp at Hobo Camp while they were in between shifts at the mining district. So that's why Hobo Camp has its name. Now, back to Ray Nelson. Nelson's contribution, he was born in 1893 and was a big name in the mining district. He ended up owning what is now Fairview Peak and Bohemia Saddle Park, and the land was donated to Lane County. And it is now Lane County's only high alpine park. Both of those places still exist. The watchtower is still up there. Bohemia Park is still there. That's where the breakfast happens. So during this time in the early 60s, there were statewide BMD promotional efforts. That ore cart you're looking at right now was an ore cart that was taken through parades all across the state and pushed by hand to promote Bohemia Mining Days right here in Cottage Grove. At the end there it tags in, Andrew Nelson was Ray's father. And if you didn't know this, Andrew Nelson was the fellow that brought electricity into Cottage Grove, and I believe he had a hand in bringing electricity up the mountain as well.
Also Cresswell.
And Cresswell. So without the Nelson family, without Andy and Ray Nelson, we would be without a lot of really awesome things. I'm sure somebody else would have brought electricity into town, but without Andy, maybe it would have taken a little bit longer to happen. Going back to the miners' breakfast on the mountain, in 1964, the prospectors and gold diggers established its popular and enduring miners' breakfast on the mountain in the heart of the Bohemia Mining District on Sunday morning during BMD. The hours are 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. And in relation to this year, if you have an interest in going to the breakfast on the mountain, I highly encourage you to do so. I also want to preface this because I've been talking with them that there is a possibility, due to the wildfire danger we're coming into this year and the lack of snowpack that we've got, there's a strong possibility it will not take place on Bohemia Mountain. They do have a backup plan though. If it can't take place on Bohemia Mountain, it's going to be coming down to Cottage Grove High School, and they're going to be doing it there instead. But let's all fingers crossed for a nice wet summer. One of the goals of the breakfast on the mountain was to simulate breakfast in one of the early mining camps and to generate greater public support and donations to preserve the remnants of the original Bohemia City mining town, which is still ongoing. There's lots of preservation efforts. As of last year, I never got his name actually, but I met someone at Bohemia Mining Days who was part owner on the music mine, and he was rebuilding some of the foundational struts on the post office building. Most of the buildings that were up there are no longer up there. So it was nice to see there's still work being done in this aspect of our culture and our heritage, which this year Bohemia City incorporated in 1866, which would mean that Bohemia City is 160 years old this year.
Wow.
So since 1964, prospectors and gold diggers have served thousands during BMD weekend. The breakfast runs from 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. and you get all you can eat: flapjacks, ham, eggs, OJ, and coffee. And as far as the secret ingredient goes, my guess is vanilla, but I don't know. In the later 60s, we see the rise of the Limeti Gang. So in 1968, Ray Nelson formed the Limeti Gang with 15 Prospectors Club members. They partnered with the Cottage Grove Riding Club to stage train robbery, and their target was the excursion train offering free 3-hour trips to Bohemia Lumber Co. in Colt Creek. Does anyone here remember the train that ran around Dorena Lake back in the 70s and 80s? Yeah, there we go, the Blue Goose. We've got a nice, beautiful mural of it right across from our office now. That was also beautifully done by Heather Endicott, a very talented artist. So, created by the Prospectors Club in 1968, the gang grew in popularity and sophistication. But in 2003, they disbanded. They said, we're all too old and we don't want to do it anymore. Well, for Bohemia Mining Days' 60th anniversary, Mayor Jeff Gowing and reunited the former gunslingers for the Grand Miners Parade. And keep this under your hats, but I hear a rumor that the Limeti Gang might be coming back this year. So keep that under your hats for now, we will see. P&G Club and Bohemia Mining Days split on July 19th, 1962, the Bohemia Days Committee, Inc. was formed and managed by the P&G Club, but by the late 1960s, P&G stretched out too thin, running 2 events in one weekend, and they split ways and were able to, one side stuck with breakfast and one side stuck with the festival. That said, they are what would be known as sister organizations because they both benefit each other at the time, and we still do that today. When we go into other parades, we join the prospectors and gold diggers, and we hand out maps for the breakfast on the mountain. You know, even though Spirit of BMD is a new organization, we've kept that tradition of maintaining and honoring our heritage with that. So in 1965, we see the rise of BMD royalty. Under the leadership of the BMD committee president, Bill Whiteman, the Queen's Court was introduced. And the first queen was Amelia Donovan, now Blowers, who served for 2 years. Carolyn Cutts, now Rippey, followed her. They were invited guests as the 2017 Grand Miners Parade and Grand Marshals, and returned in 2019 to celebrate BMD's Diamond Jubilee. That tradition ended in the 1980s, but if you'd like to see it come back, I would love to talk with someone that wants to take ownership over that. So I think that would be a cool thing to come back. So Governor Hatfield was the only governor, supposedly, to attend Bohemia Mining Days. In 1966, he joined in and rode in the big parade on Saturday afternoon with other honored guests, including Glenn Jackson, chairman of the Oregon State Highway Commission, and Hollis M. Dole, Oregon State geologist, and the Cottage Grove community were honored to have those state dignitaries join us in reliving our great history. In the 1970s, we see a new chapter begins, and a couple of these photos I just want to point out. These 2 photos here were taken by my great-uncle Don Leach back in the day. These were photos that I had acquired from my Uncle Roger, who was his son. It would have been late in 2024 when I first got them. In the 1970s, BMD reestablished itself as Cottage Grove's most spirited tradition, celebrating the gold rush history with authentic costumes, parades, and Old West antics. The Grand Miners Parade and the Lemmetai Gang Jail became iconic attractions. And I want to point out something Deborah said earlier when she was introducing me. So if you don't know, and if you didn't know, I run the Bohemia City Jail Cell during the festival. Now that I run the festival, that's a lot harder to do. But we still managed to do it because a lot of folks love it. Well, when we started in 2019 doing the jail cell, I had no idea that this was a decades-old tradition I was reviving just by chance. And we've even kept our prices the exact same as what they were in the 70s. $5 to get you in jail, or get you out of jail. So in the 70s and 76, we see the featured Western States Fast Draw Championship, and that was done by Ivan Hoyer? No, Marshall Isaacs, I believe. Dave, help me out here. Who started the Fast Draw? I just did this. Henry Isaacs. That sounds right. You know, when you do so much research and you do just a little bit of everything, some of that stuff goes out the window. So, I would hope so. Anyway, the Western States Fast Draw Championship established itself in 1976, and in 1977, the Bohemia Mining Days buttons became collectible keepsakes. I'm not entirely sure how that one worked out. It was part of the research I did, but buttons existed all the way back from 1963 at least. If you want to come see them, we have a button board at the Spirit of BMD office that has almost every single button that took place from 1963 to present day. I think we're missing one, and I think it was from, I'm not sure. I'd have to look. So in the 70s, we see culture growing around Bohemia Mining Days with the annual art show at the time by Bohemia Art Guild. These days it's by the Cottage Grove Art Collective. An antique aircraft display all weekend in the 70s. Family fun at the Candyland Circus at Jefferson School, and a kids' day at the carnival. And everybody asks me, I get this question maybe once a week, all year long. And that's not an exaggeration. I get the question, is the carnival coming back to BMD? And I have bad news, I don't think so. But it's possible one day. COVID kind of killed off the carnival companies, and that's been an ongoing thing. So we keep trying, we hope, but at the same time, given the current state of Cottage Grove, it's finding a harder spot it's becoming harder to find a spot to put them. So even if they could come, we're not entirely sure where they would go now. But we keep trying, and maybe one of these days we'll succeed. Anyway, at this time, Bohemia City had food, games, and reenactments with steam train rides on the Goose and fast draw shootouts by Henry Isaacs. I knew we'd get there eventually. Jerry Lewis appeared in the BMD parade alongside 1970 National Poster Child for Muscular Dystrophy Association, Scotty Swift. So that's pretty cool. A couple of celebrities coming through. I didn't update this slide. In its 67-year history, there have been 6 marshals protecting the good citizens of Bohemia City. They serve as ambassadors to promote the festival, the first of which was Henry Isaacs on February 15th, 1973. He was a national fast draw champion and attracted other national champions to compete at Bohemia Mining Days in 1976. In the 1980s, we saw bigger, bolder, and sweeter with cookie contests, tea cookie tastings, and even frog jumping competitions. Now these are real frogs, and not what you guys are thinking. Just keep that on the table. No, for real. I thought that was such an interesting thing. And I can't imagine how bad those frogs must have felt in the July heat, racing down whatever little track they had. But they probably had a bunch of water. Anyway, in 1982, over 1,000 runners competed in the BMD Half Marathon, and in '83, Herb Bloomfield donated real gold for panning demos, and the Helena Saloon revived with root beer and can-can dancing. So, for what it's worth, if you guys haven't been gold panning, there is still real gold to pan for at Bohemia Mining Days. That's by the Bohemia Mine Owners Association, as well as the Bohemia Gold Mining Museum. Let's be real, those two are very interchangeable. A lot of the folks in those two organizations cross over into the other. But if you'd like to try your hand at gold panning, come down to BMD this year, because there is real gold hiding in there. Despite the occasional volunteer shortages, passionate locals like Doyle Hicks kept the dream alive in the 80s. Button traditions continued, honoring community legends like Donna Allen, Ray Nelson, and Bill Bartels, and others. In the 1990s, growth tradition and tough decisions. Senior court traditions thrived, honoring local women in history. Bohemia City expanded with heritage booths, flint knapping, and gold panning. Kitty parades, beard contests, and miners' breakfasts all became fan favorites. We haven't had a real kitty parade in a few years, but thanks to Cindy Wheeldryer this year, the kitty parade is also coming back this year. You know, the growing pangs of restarting an old tradition means finding the right folks at the right time to do the right things. Fortunately, this year, one of those things we were able to revive is the kitty parade, which will go from the community center down, actually I don't know what the map is, it goes from the community center to Main Street back to the community center. There will be a map on the application or on the information on the website. So during my research through BMD, I found something interesting, and that was starting around the 1990s. Every couple of years, something would happen and Bohemia Mining Days would start to become in dire straits, and somebody would have to come around and save the day. And one of the first times we see that is in 1993-94 where the school board bans the carnival from school grounds, forcing a new location search. Part of the reason for that was because you couldn't smoke on school property, and they just didn't think that you would be able to stop carnival participants from smoking at the carnival. But thanks to Alex Madonna at the time, they were moved to just south of the fire station on Highway 99 South, which at the time was an empty field, is now full of tiny homes. Again, mentioning that every couple of years, things start getting a little shaky for the Bohemia Mining Days crew. Mounting festival debts in the late 90s hit over $90,000, which that's not something to shake. That's not, what's a good phrase for that? I don't know. That's definitely a lot of money. But in 2001, the city and chamber demanded a plan or they'd pull back support. Public feedback called BMD too spread out and poorly managed. Organizers were given three choices: dissolve BMD, find a financial angel, or continue without the city or chamber help. Well, they turned a corner from uncertainty to resilience, because in the early 2000s, they were filled with, well, the early 2000s were filled with growing pains, but the community pulled together and leadership adapted BMD, stayed alive through cooperation, creativity, and grit. I vaguely recall the actual resolution for that was Bohemia Mining Days took a loan against the city at the time, and they repaid it back over time. But it took them a long time to pay it back. On October 27th, 2006, the Bohemia Days Committee, Inc. officially became the Bohemia Mining Days, Inc. in the Oregon Business Registry, but the name was unofficially adopted much earlier. One of the big figures in BMD's success was Sharon Jean. I've had the pleasure to talk to her over the phone, but she lives in Hawaii now. That makes coming over for a cup of coffee kind of hard. Though I've certainly tried, me and my wife are working our way there. Anyway, soon after moving to town, businesswoman Sharon Jean jumped in to help her friend, BMD President George Stafford, bring the festival back from a financial disaster in 1999. Using her leadership experience, Sharon gave BMD a much-needed formal structure, lasting financial stability, and she organized the 50th Golden Anniversary celebration in 2009. She came out of retirement in 2012 and managed another financial crisis and offered valuable advice during the spirit of BMD's revival in 2024. Which leads me to a point that I'd like to pause and make, because if you haven't gotten yourself a raffle ticket, I have a gift for you. That gift is a 50th anniversary BMD coin right here. There is a real piece of gold from our real creeks on this, inside the gold pan on this coin. This will be one of the raffle ticket prizes tonight. So if you haven't gotten your raffle tickets, Linda's over there and she has raffle tickets for you. Make sure to grab a couple. Sorry about this, Jim. I keep moving your microphone. Anyway, Sharon has been a valuable person to know. She's very intelligent, and she really helped us revive the spirit of BMD in 2024. Which, point of order, the festival itself is always going to remain the Bohemia Mining Days Festival. The organization is named Spirit of Bohemia Mining Days. The joke there was, are you guys familiar with Spirit Halloween? The joke there was, we came into a dead department store and revived it for the sake of an event in that first year, but then we stuck with the name and it took on new meanings after that. So, little tidbit of history on the name. Anyway, after serving for 35 years as Bohemia City Marshal, Henry Isaacs hung up his guns and appointed Cottage Grove Mayor Gary Williams as his successor in 2007. Marshal Gary kept the peace in Bohemia City for 9 years, from 2008 to 2016. And at the opening ceremony of BMD 2017, Marshall Gary passed the honor to CG City Councilor Bob Ehler. Is anyone here, did anyone know Bob? I knew Bob. That was one of the nicest men I've ever met. He didn't just care about Cottage Grove. He built bikes for kids that needed bicycles, and he did a ton of stuff, but that was the one thing at the time that I was like, wow, this is so cool. I met him in high school looking to do research on a historic project, and he was so nice. Rest in peace, Bob. Through 2010 and 2015, we see Jake Boone joins the board and becomes the president of BMD through 2011-2014, and he helped foster some fresh energy with the introduction of the Slabtown and Lemmetai feud games, a new crowd favorite built on the historic rivalry. They faced financial strain in the 2011's rainout, but rallied enough community support to continue creative planning. So Jake Boone was the festival's perennial shoestring budget took a hard hit in 2011, and he created this idea to recreate the feud games in that year to, on top of educate folks about Cottage Grove's history between Slabtown and Lemmetai, which if you don't know, let's branch off here for a minute because this is a good moment for it. Cottage Grove in the late 1800s was two different towns, and there's a long dedicated story that I'm sure somebody else has better history talk on it than I do. But where we're standing right now would have been Lemmetai. And right on the other side of the river, right over there, would have been Slabtown. Slabtown was never the real name though. It was always named Cottage Grove, but these Lemmetai folks used Slabtown as a slang name to put those Cottage Grovians down. And it goes into, this right here used to actually be East Cottage Grove, and then they changed it to Lemmetai because they didn't want anything to do with those Cottage Grove ruffians. 2015 to 2020, we see milestones and mounting pressure. Parade participation surged and multiple record attendance years and renewed tourism interest, with continued classics like the Bloomers Parade, the Carnival, the Mountain Breakfast, reenactments, and vendor markets. Behind the scenes, though, organizers struggled with a bare-bones budget and growing volunteer burnout. And the thing is, that's been a constant threat on every horizon, not just for BMD, but volunteer burnout is a strong thing. We've attempted to shift directions with that and help volunteer burnout by really spreading the weight amongst more people, as well as we've focused a lot more on education. If you didn't know this, Spirit of Bohemia Mining Days now focuses heavily on education, going into the schools and into the senior living communities, doing workshops. So those opportunities are on the table if you have an opportunity for them. But the goal here was to help people understand and have pride in their community, as well as spreading the weight, finding more volunteers, finding more people, so that one person isn't doing everything for too long and then all of a sudden it's gone. Cindy Wheeldryer is one of the other BMD legends. She served, she had over 25 years of experience and dedication to Bohemia Mining Days. She was the festival coordinator for a number of years. It's on here somewhere, from 2015 to 2019. But she wore many other hats as well, and if you know her, you know that her nickname is the Hat Lady, because she wears so many hats. So I'll just read through this really quick. She joined the production team in 2004 and served on 17 BMD teams through 2021, bringing her passion for local history to every detail. Cindy introduced beloved features like the Bohemia City Players, the Historical Treasure Hunt, the Covered Bridge Tours, and as festival coordinator from 2015 onward, she wore many hats. Fundraising, grant writing, publicity, cultural programming, volunteer recruitment, even organizing the Kitty Parade. A tireless advocate for the festival's legacy, she now serves as a mentor to current leadership as well as a paid advisor for at least the duration of this year. She has been able to help us with grant writing as well as fundraising and community support. I am certainly blessed to know her and to, certainly blessed to know her and to learn from her. We get back to Bob Ehler, and we have a tragic loss for him in 2016. And this is why I was saying rest in peace, because due to cancer complications on May 10th, 2020, at the age of 67, he decided to head home. So, the festival was left without a marshal for a little while. In 2020, we see the first ever cancellation. COVID canceled Bohemia Mining Days for the first time since 1959. Health restrictions made planning impossible and forced a total pause on all activities. The beloved miners' breakfast, parades, and Bohemia City were all called off. The financial hit, no revenue from 2020 meant no startup funds for 2021. So one of the other reasons that we've expanded into education and expanded into these other areas of expertise is because the festival, I don't know if you guys know this, but the festival doesn't even pay for itself, and it never has. That's why it relies on the donations of our community, because as a rough estimate, the festival more or less pays for 2 bills of the 6 or 7 big bills that happen at the festival every year. And the reality is, if we raised rates for the vendor fees or raised rates for the parade fees, folks wouldn't want to come, or they wouldn't be able to afford to come. So that's why we're a 501c3, and we rely on community donations because we want to see this trend continue. In 2021 through 2023, they were rebuilding a tradition. 2021 marked the return to its downtown roots with a modest community-powered festival. So that was my second year running the Bohemia City Jail, and because there wasn't one in 2020, but there was in 2019. So my second year ever running the Bohemia City Jail, and Kenneth Michael Roberts managed to find a jail cell for me. Of all the things that you could gift to somebody, a jail cell is not one of those ones that I've ever been gifted before. And he wasn't calm about it either. He was very cryptic. He called me on the phone, he said, "Hey Matt, I need you to come to the alleyway behind the book mine and go buy some paint." I'm like, "Well, what do you got going on?" He's like, "Don't worry about it, just go buy some paint, come here." So I show up and he's got a jail cell and he wants me to paint it. And he's like, "All right, you painted it, it's yours now." So that first year we got our current jail cell. But I bring that up because that was a hot year. Did any of you go to the Bohemia Mining Days in 2021 down here on Main Street? A couple of hands. It was hot. It was hot, hot, hot. I had some boots that were very similar to this, and I tell you, the soles melted off of them. Standing on that hot asphalt for 12 hours a day was too much for my boots. So that said, that year in 2021 ignited for the very first time the ore cart races. And if you've been taking notes, you'll notice that we haven't had the ore cart races since Spirit of BMD has been performing the Bohemia Mining Days Festival. But I have some more good news for you, and that is the ore cart races are returning this year. Yes, that's really worthy of applause. I'm telling you right now. If you don't know him, the guy's name is Adam Williams, and he's a member of the Bohemia Mine Owners Association. Adam is a great guy. He's a very kind soul, and he's a farrier locally here in town. Which, if you don't know what that means, he trims horse hooves and does horseshoes. And Linda, what do farriers do?
They trim up horseshoes and take care of horses' feet.
Yeah, that's it.
And Alex is one of the best.
They're horse.
He was at my house yesterday.
Say again.
He was at my house yesterday.
And he's a great fella. But anyway, he's taking it back. So this year at Bohemia Mining Days, be sure to stop by right after the parade, right in front of the Bohemia Gold Mining Museum, because that is where the ore cart races are going to be taking place. You'll notice this year as the festival schedule gets updated on the website that there are things happening all over Cottage Grove, and that's no mistake, as well as it's nothing new. Bohemia Mining Days has always been a town tradition, and things happen across the town. Various things happen across town, but this one thing is going to be worth watching. The first ore cart races, the 4th annual, but the first in 2 years.
Wow.
3 years? Something like that. Anyway, through 21 and 23, there was no carnival or big budget, but spirit was high thanks to dedicated volunteers. In 22 and 23, that brought cautious expansion, more vendors, stage acts, and improved parade routes. Leadership remained uncertain with volunteer burnout and planning gaps behind the scenes, and community nostalgia kept the event alive, but the structural cracks deepened. So, big boots to fill. Following Bob Euler's passing early in 2021, the BMD board voted to ask Kenneth Roberts if he would be the marshal. City Councilor Kenneth Michael Roberts, thank you, was sworn in as Bohemia City Marshal April 24, 2021, and was sworn in by Cottage Grove Municipal Judge Martin Fisher during a BMD news conference. Ken served as marshal until mid-2023 when he moved to his dream home in Northeast Oregon. Bohemia Mining Days leadership appointed Christina Hester as the first female Bohemia City Marshal. She was officially sworn in by Mayor Soulsby on June 21st, 2023, and Christina proudly held the role through 2023, but stepped down later that year. 2024, Revival, Restructure, and Renewal. After BMD Inc. announced the festival's cancellation, Matthew Hewlett and Jeremy Ferguson stepped in with a simple goal: keep the tradition alive, even if it was just a small flea market. But the community had other ideas, and the community is named Cindy Wheeldryer. So, I'll skip reading that slide because it tells better verbally. So, right after the previous organization decided they weren't going to hold the festival, within a day, I put in my application to get a permit for the park because I wanted to try and make something happen. Well, I don't think it was more than a day later, I got a call from Cindy Wheeldryer. And at the time, I knew Cindy. I'd gone to a BMD meeting before, I'd gone to a prospectors meeting before. She helped me get involved in 2019. I knew who she was. I knew she was a lovely lady. But she called me right after that and she said, "Hey Matthew, I heard you have a permit for the park. What are you planning on doing with it?" And me and Jeremy, we had pretty small plans. We were going to host a flea market and put the jail cell up in the park and just kind of see what happened. She's like, "Well, what do you think if we just try and do the whole thing?" And I said, "You know, let's bite off more than we can chew. Let's go for it." So within about a week, we got together. She made some calls and called up Linda Oxley and Kathy Simmons and Jolie Saunders and all the people that have been with Spirit of BMD for the last few years, and brought the band back together, as she worded it. So we started having those meetings and we started really working together, and honestly, it was a huge blessing for all of these people to come together in the way that they did, because it turned out way better than anything I had planned. At the bottom there, it wasn't just a comeback, it was a reinvention with purpose, and that could not be more true. That first year in 24, we see Ken Roberts riding again as marshal. We asked Christina Hester if she would come back and be the marshal, as ceremonially, as we were trying to get things started again. She was a little too busy. She does dog training, she does a bunch of other stuff. A very busy lady, and said, "I just can't commit the time." But Ken was more than happy to come back. And we like Ken pretty well. So we asked him to come back, and he was more than happy to make the trip from Eastern Oregon. Right after that first year, there was a lot of really big changes. And you'll notice some familiar faces in these photos up here. Deborah Monson. So that first picture up on the left was the first time that we had ever asked the Woodard Family Foundation to help us make sure this continued through a large grant. And during that presentation that I gave, which for what it's worth, I'm a much better public speaker now, but I still have immense stage fright all the time. I had so much more then, it was incredible. I was shaking, but she gave me this painting that you'll see up there, and it's actually hanging in my office. The reason she gave me that painting is because that painting was painted by my great-great-grandmother, Ruth Marie Simmons, or Ruth Marie Mansell before she was married. And she was a local painter here in Cottage Grove. She taught oil painting throughout the 70s at LCC and at the Emerald Art Academy. And then died of cancer, I think, in 1977. Anyway, we officially became a 501c3 at the end of 2024 as BMD Inc. formally closed, and they transferred all of their assets over to us, which was a huge help because 67 years of history is really hard to replace. So it was a huge blessing they were able to do that. And then we started establishing partnerships with a variety of different people across Cottage Grove and those in organizations. And those organizations are growing every single day. One of the most prolific, no, that's not the right word. One of the best ones is the relationship we have with the Cottage Grove Genealogical Society, because a lot of the history that we do and a lot of the research we do revolves around the people that existed in Cottage Grove's early history. One point here before I move on. When we came together, we made a significant point that we wanted to be financially transparent with community reconnection and digital outreach as a priority. We wanted to make sure that everyone knew what we were doing when we were doing it, because we just want to we want you to be able to trust us, and that comes with evidence. So in March of 2025, our great historian, as well as 6th Marshal Dave Light, got swore in by Judge Martin Fisher. And we see our great marshal here. Yes, there we go. He truly deserves the applause. He has been so immensely helpful on uncovering the history and providing content for social media. Dave, you're an absolute blessing to know, and we're really glad that you're the Bohemia City Marshal. So in 2025, our first real year doing Bohemia Mining Days, I didn't have a ton of time. As you would believe, I have a ton of free time right now. That's a joke, I don't. The festival planning has been well underway for months now, and it has taken up almost all of my time. So the next couple of slides, though they're brief, they give you a brief update as of what happened last year. We estimated that there were 25,000 attendees that came through Bohemia Mining Days through the course of the weekend, which is amazing numbers. We had 89 vendors, 82 sponsors, and around 70 volunteers. And as of midway through 2025, it was shortly after the festival, our social media had reached 1.13 million views, and it's grown by almost double since then. You'll see a couple of good pictures. That one on the top right, that's my favorite. So we revived the pie eating contest last year, and Toby Demore was the reigning champion. He's thinking about getting himself a crown and robe to come compete again this year. But part of the prize for winning the pie eating contest on top of a stomachache was you got to slam whoever you wanted to in the face with a cream pie. He really wanted to do that to me. And it took me over an hour to get that cream out of my beard and out of my hair. I had to ask my grandma and my mom, like, hey, can you bring me dish soap into the park? Anyway, one of the other cool things that is really underrated is Kyle Kishman Construction was able to make a replica of the Dr. Pierce's barn sign. And Kyle Kishman Construction has been working incredibly hard to continue to create facade walls for Bohemia Mining Days. As of this year, he wasn't able to do it last year, but this year, he's a woodshop teacher at Crow High School, and he was able to get his kids at Crow High School to help build the frames for the facade walls you see this year. So if you know any kids at Crow High School in the woodshop program out there, they had a direct hand in the walls of Bohemia City this year. A couple other fun favorite photos. We see a couple of real cute kids up there competing in the costume contest. You know, a wild crowd, me doing the jail cell thing, and then Tim Schweitzer and Cindy Wheeldryer going at it in the costume contest, and then Tom Pepiot teaching some folks how to pan for gold. 2026 and beyond, we are reclaiming Ray Nelson's original vision for Bohemia Mining Days. Spirit of BMD now champions the full heritage of the region, which is mining, timber, agriculture, railroad, and Native American culture and community tradition. So we've done so much research on all of these things because we want to honor the entire history of Cottage Grove and not just the mining aspect, though we do prioritize the mining aspect, but there's so many good stories to tell across the board. So keep an eye out on our social media and through the festival for things like that. And then in regard to our education, we have programs like the Bohemia Academy that are investing in the next generation by helping kids get interested in our history and by proxy showing them the value of volunteerism. Many of you are probably aware that volunteers are hard to come by these days, and we want to show kids how important it is now to start caring about not just us, but the Rotary, the Lions, the Kiwanis, the genealogical, the historical, the museums. We want kids to grow up with this investment in their community, and we can only do that by showing them through leadership that there are opportunities for them to fall in love with Cottage Grove. And then, well, thank you. You guys are sweet. Online platforms like the Legends of Cottage Grove series is expanding our digital footprint by a lot, if you haven't noticed. I think we're almost up to 9,000 followers on Facebook. And if you didn't know, The Mining Vault, which is a podcast we started to try and reach a younger generation, and really in part of that Bohemia Academy, investing in our youth and in getting them interested in history. Well, we've gone backwards and forwards with this project because we started with podcasting, and we still do it. But we were given an opportunity to host a show on KNND about the Mining Vault. And this goes, Deborah Monson was our recent guest on the show talking about the World War II project she's been doing. It's really just a casual talk show that is about exploring history, experiencing community, and hearing the stories that still shape us today. So Fridays at 11 a.m. on KNND. You can hear it on the radio, you can see it on the live stream on Cameron's live stream, and then if you follow us on Spotify, we'll upload the same episodes on Spotify as well. So in its 67-year history, BMD has been blessed with deeply committed volunteers and with leadership skills and a failure is not an option attitude. And this is just a handful of some of those leadership teams. A list of past notable leaders, but I realize we're getting into a little bit longer than I anticipated. So we're going to zip through the next couple of slides. But basically these next slides just really go into what Bohemia Mining Days is today. And we still have the Slabtown and Limmatide feud with a variety of different fun games. This year we're going to be bringing back the Cherry Pit Spittin' Contest. So be sure to keep an eye on the schedule for that. With a variety of mining-themed contests as well. And the pie eating contest is definitely coming back this year. as we've always done, we have the beard and mustache contest. Historically, it used to be the untamely, stately, and hairy leg, but now we've gotten rid of the hairy leg because most people don't want to grow hair out on their legs, but brought back the classic mustache and curl. That said, if there was a significant interest for the hairy leg portion, we'd bring that back too. The costume contest is always a good time. That first photo on the top left is Bob Ehler, but the rest are from last year's Bohemia Mining Days, and those kids were just adorable. I tell you what, they were such good sports. The pie eating contest is coming back, and we see our reigning king right there in the bottom middle. So one thing that we haven't brought back this year, but we're interested in figuring out how to bring it back, is the Bloomers Parade. The idea this year is if there's an interest for folks to have the Bloomers Parade, let's bring it together in with the Grand Miners Parade this year. And if we can establish contact with the folks that normally do it, maybe we'll bring back the whole thing next year. But it typically takes place on the Thursday morning of the festival. The Kitty Parade takes place on Friday morning of the festival. And then the Grand Miners Parade takes place on Saturday morning of the festival. And if you would, I'll pause here for a minute, because if you'd like to get your parade application, you can scan that QR code, or you can go to spiritofbmd.com/join the parade and grab yourself that application. If not right now, that's fine. It's on the website, so it's not going anywhere. But be sure, if you're going to be in the parade, let's hurry up and get those applications in, because I don't know if you know this, but the festival is only 5 weeks away.
Wow.
Cowboy Buck will be joining us again in 2026. I love him. He has such good kid games. You know, they live in, I think, Ohio or Oklahoma or something now. Definitely not Oregon. But he comes back to BMD every year, and they do such a good job. I watched him last year convince several 10-year-old boys to chug baby bottles. And that's not something I think most people have a skill for. Live music is always a big thing at BMD. We have a variety of different cultural offerings. We're going to have blacksmithing demonstrations by the Cottage Smithy, the art show by Cottage Grove Art Collective, living history displays by Singing Creek, and Native American culture by Dietz Peters with the Grand Ronde Reservation, as well as obviously the jail cell, the Ore Cart races, and a variety of other things that are going to be happening. That said, it takes us nearly a full week to get ready for the festival, and then we have one day to bring it all back down. Last year we were shocked and blessed with a very small crew to be able to tear down all of Bohemia City by 3 p.m. That was a fluke. So that definitely wasn't normal, because we did not have that many folks. It takes, on a regular basis, it takes well over 100 volunteers to make BMD happen. Last year we had plenty of places that we still needed people. So if you've got a kid that needs volunteer hours, or you want to help your community, we have opportunities, and we'd really like to talk with you about it. Speaking of which, if you like QR codes, here's another one, because if you'd like to join our crew and be a volunteer at BMD this year, you can scan this QR code right here, and that'll bring you to the volunteer application. And you know, it really is a good time. We've got swag bags for the crew, there's snacks and goodies and all sorts of fun stuff, on top of being a part of the crew. You know, BMD is a community tradition, so I'd love to see all of you in one way or another be there at the festival this year, whether helping or attending, one or the other. And we did close down vendor applications pretty early this year. We got full quick. We shut down vendor applications in April, and that's not normal. So we've already got more than we expected, and we had to stop. That said, if you know of someone that has a living history type of vendor thing, We do have a few spots for that in particular, but that's it. We want to thank our sponsors. The big four at this current moment are the Woodard Family Foundation, Starfire Lumber, Kyle Kitchen Construction, and the City of Cottage Grove. And I want to make a point that this year, because of the budget differences with the City of Cottage Grove, we don't actually know if they can help us financially this year. We won't know for another couple of weeks, but they do provide a lot of in-kind services, and without it, the festival wouldn't be possible at all in any way. They provide the generators, the fuel, they prepare the parks, they make sure the police overtime is paid, and the public works overtime is paid, and the immense help that they've been through getting just the ODOT approval was valuable enough. But they are one of our biggest helps, whether they commit financially or not. We're just blessed that they are willing to help. And one of the things that we're working on changing this year, and I realize we're running long, but I really want to encourage all of you to really take dressing up seriously this year, because Bohemia Mining Days should feel like you're walking into the Old West. So head down to Schweitzer's, get on Amazon, whatever you want to do, grab yourself a hat, a vest, some boots, get dressed up for BMD this year. You don't have to wear 25 layers of vintage Victorian dress, because it's really just not, these people that lived here in the middle of July, they had summer clothes. I realize it's hot, but I'm wearing this in the middle of summer. I'd like to see some rolled up sleeves and some cowboy boots. But we're going to take dressing up seriously this year. Dana Meriday is helping us make sure that goes off without a hitch with our booth decor contest, our costume contest. And this particular ad was made based on some stuff he sent me to try and help people get inspired to dress up. Which, these kids right here, adorable. Darn adorable. They were in the Bohemia Mining Days parade, I think in 2013. So they're probably much older now. All right, mark your calendars. It is July 16th through the 18th this year. And if you want to stay connected or donate, we've got that QR code right here, and we've got all the website stuff up there. I'm going to leave that there for the remainder of our time here. So thank you all so much for listening. Thank you.